PowerPointless. That's a presentation overflowing with hundreds of bullet points and charts and graphics and everything else that just makes your eyes want to glaze over. It's just too much. So many presentations these days are PowerPointless. A lot of good information, but crammed so tightly together in such a small space, you have to squint to look at it. And you're trying to figure out, where do I start? Where does my attention go? It defeats the purpose of good, effective communication. Companies do this when they have so much information that they want to share, but they are very poor storytellers. A presentation is not a report. A presentation is a storytelling experience. And to be really good at giving a presentation, you need to understand these 3 steps to avoid being PowerPointless. Step 1, think of a slide as one thought. What's the one thought you want to get out there that you could show and feel comfortable enough of taking people on a journey to the next slide? You can always have your slides in sections, and you can communicate this with having a section at the beginning. That way your audience always knows that you're still on that section. They don't get lost. Step 2, animation. Animation is a good way to only show what is the current thought, and then you can show more on the slide as it progresses, and you can even fade out the previous part you were talking about, so you're still on the same slide. That way you have focus. And step 3, provide the option of a longer version after the presentation. Let the audience know that they'll have a copy, that they can have a recording. What you want the focus to be is on you, the presenter. You are the storyteller. You want people to have an experience and not just simply a ton of information. Those are 3 really good tips that will make you a fantastic presenter and avoid being PowerPointless. PowerPointless, your Grantasm's twisted word of the day. Note to self, always learn. Hello, everybody out in LinkedIn land, Facebook live time, YouTubies, the TikTokers, the flip-floppers, the whatchamacallits, whatever's the new craze. I don't care anymore. We're here. I am with Amy Callahan, a fellow creative communication strategist and also a coach for businesses who want to communicate better. And guess what? We both like to have fun doing it. I am Grant Crowell, creative learning facilitator. This is my first LinkedIn Live, and I am also a twisted wordsmith. What makes this a little different is we have a little twist. We have fun. It's laugh and learn. It's have some humor, share some stories. It's business casual. It's Grammar Girl meets Dilbert, and insert any other scary thing in between. This is not your mom's or your dad's LinkedIn Live, which is strange because LinkedIn Live hasn't been around that long. But with me is Amy Callahan. And Amy, say hi to the folks out there in internet land.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Grant. This is really fun.
Thank you. And a little about our story and how Amy and I know each other is we were both in this group called H2H, Human Business Coaching Group. I was there to start on my book, Grantasms, which was about twisted words. And Amy and I really hit it off, and it was just so natural versus a lot of sometimes other groups where the networking might seem either a little cheesy or a little forced. This was a really, really great opportunity. It was having mentors such as Brian and Courtney Kramer in there and to let us do our thing. And it was both learning and it was inspiration and motivation and true friendships. And Amy is my first guest. And that said, I'm now going to do cheesy intro time. So Amy, you may go ahead and introduce yourself.
Again, my name is Amy Callahan and my business is called Callaplan. And that's my Uism, by the way. It's my play on words. So I have been doing presentations for many years for people from 4 years old to 80 years old. And I've taking that skill and helping other people develop it for themselves, whether it's a job application, a sales pitch, becoming a better leader, learning how to be an entrepreneur, or just looking at different ways to practice communication that might be just private and for themselves. And I provide tools for that as well.
And now we get to switch to side by side. By the way, for those people uninitiated, this is in a program called Streamyard, which because I'm a LinkedIn Live member, I'm able to go in there. Yay! Thank you, LinkedIn Live. Yeah, all right. I am somebody. Or maybe a lot of people have been going, who the crap is showing up in my feed right now? I got stuff to do. No, you don't. It's 5:30 Eastern time zone. It's going to be 5:30 eventually. Now's the time to enjoy yourselves here.
Yeah.
So we can have some, we're going to have some fun here. This is all the things you can do. You can see my UISMs logo. What the heck is UISMs? I like to call them creative communication games for different brains. And when you have fun and when you do it socially, like we're doing here, we're going to use one word to describe a business challenge, a problem, a frustration, maybe the things that make you want to pull your hair out, but sometimes by turning your frustrations into a game, particularly a communication game, and you talk about it with somebody, you can do some great problem solving, but also you feel a lot better from that. And Amy and I have had so much fun just talking about these things, and that's why I want to make Amy my first guest to talk about this issue we have here called PowerPointless. And what I want to do is I want to see if I can remember how to do this graphic right here, but actually instead of me doing a graphic, oh yes, we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to first try to show examples of the PowerPointless here.
Oh, yeah.
I have a bunch. It ain't going to look pretty, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to take an application window. Amy and I can have a little chat because we've dealt with a lot of this. Let's see if I can bring this up here. There we go. Let's see if this will show up here. Okay, going to give this a shot. All right, there we go. We did a rehearsal, by the way, as a practice, because I have never done a broadcast. I've been on someone's StreamYard, but I've never done a broadcast. And these are just some of the examples. Let's see if I can remember how to do this here. There we go.
Yay.
Okay, yay, there we are. All right, these are actual PowerPoint slides. Now, I'm not showing any from my actual workplaces, but it is like a Dilbert cartoon sometimes with how incredibly busy they are. Sometimes even when I've been to events such as Toastmasters, people there who are practicing public speaking, and some are good public speakers, but with the transition over from doing things virtually, they fall on back to the old thing of get all my ideas out in one place. And it's just crazy. These are actual PowerPoint slides, or I call them PowerPointless slides. And it's just so much. And sometimes it's just boring. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Amy, can you relate to any of this stuff?
Yes. It's painful when I've seen the slide, like the first one that you showed.
Yep.
Oh, it was just like I was dizzy looking at it. Just there's too much information. What am I supposed to get out of this? Okay, so there's some colors and there's columns, but I really, you can't even. Am I going from is it like layers of the earth and you go to the surface, or is it top down? You can't tell and you can't read anything. So it's just wavy.
It's crazy because for me, and I openly say I'm proud to have my ADHD. Because it's my different brain, and I have to work with people whose brains are different from mine. And when I get so much of this, it's information overload, but I'm also trying to compete for where do I look first? Where do I go first? When you put so much information in one place, everything is competing. And then when the speaker is talking, what the speaker is talking about, if it doesn't match what's on the slide, or if they have one small part on the slide, I have the 99 other things that are competing for my attention, so I can't give my attention to the speaker or what is being shown on the slide. So that's what we mean by a PowerPointless presentation, when there's just an overwhelming amount of visual data, visual communications, that it makes your eyes glaze over or you get anxiety. And I've seen this happen so often. But the challenge is that people feel uncomfortable with speaking up about that. So this goes to my next question is, we're talking about visual communications here. And that is what Amy is an expert in. And she had some really good information in there. Well, I consider her an expert. She's very modest, but I consider her an expert in the sense of this is visual communications. And visual communications is extremely important with how to improve on what you are trying to exchange in the form of information, but also to have an emotional resonance, to be persuasive, to be empathetic, to be a good storyteller. But I see a lot of smart people, especially in tech space, who really fail. So Amy, my question for you is, why are visual communications challenging to a lot of business people?
Because they're an expert in what they do. And when that happens, they're not an expert in many cases in being a public speaker, in using the technology to create the visual presentation. And so that can be a really big part of it. But the other thing I really do think is we're so busy. We're so busy that to do a really good presentation, that's a visual presentation that accompanies you speaking, takes time. And planning and preparation and drafts. It's not something that's a one and done kind of thing. So it's a complicated process.
You're right. It is complicated. And it's like the easiest thing to do, just like with writing a book, it's just to plop out everything that's in your head, but then you don't do organization. And it looks terrible. Like when I did my book, I had to accept once my first draft would suck, not by my standards until I reread it. And then I realized, reading it to myself, oh, this isn't great. I think the challenge is also with a lot of businesses, they are under the gun. They are expected to put so much stuff out and they fall back on showing everything they know. But it's impossible for the audience to know what they know. And that's the curse of knowledge right there. It's, I can't read what's in someone else's brain. I have 8 other things to do. Even if you're at a conference, and people put way too much information in a report because it's like, I'm going to have 7 other events. I'm also here to network. I'm not going to be able to absorb all that. And it works so much better to minimize. So I think for people who are presenting to maybe a marketing audience, there's the anxiety of not feeling comfortable with being minimal. But I also think that internally, like when you're doing it for a presentation for coworkers, especially in the tech space, it's, you want to feel like you're not going to be grilled on something you don't know. Or that maybe, but instead of thinking, it's good when people ask questions because it shows they're paying attention. And I've said before, just like in the video, a PowerPoint gets PowerPointless when it becomes a report. It's like you would, or I've seen people use it for project management and then they wonder why no one can follow it or no one does the tasks or assignments. And PowerPoint gets used for a lot of things it's not meant to be used for. But I also think that, yes, it is challenging because to do a presentation right takes a little more work. And I would rather say, just show some images and visuals that are the main thing you want people to know and make a separate thing. Maybe it's a document like a spreadsheet or a Word document that's not meant for the presentation, but as reference guides. So if we're talking here about why do people do PowerPointless presentations, I think we are talking about maybe it's a lack of time. And that's the one thing. But I think the other part is a lack of confidence in being a storyteller. And I think businesses don't teach people to give presentations. They're very informative, but they are not good at communication because they don't know what to leave out.
Or they really don't know what their goal and objective is. They have a meeting, they got to show up, they got to say something. Okay, just here, this is what we've been doing here. We'll just share this information. Or I have to use this one if it's an external presentation in a regulated business industry. I have to use this presentation. I'm stuck with it. I can't modify it. I have compliance. So this is what I have to say. And sometimes there's a huge disconnect. And that part to me is something that I had to do. And I really quickly discovered that there can often be a disconnect between the marketing department and the sales department. And the marketing department doesn't think they're a part of sales, but actually they really are a critical part of sales. But they are not in the sales field sitting down with the customer or the client. And so what they're preparing, it's awkward. It doesn't match. It's not the kinds of questions the clients are asking. And it can just be really, really unfortunate. And I remember sitting with a group of social marketers, digital marketers, and I said, and they were all marketers, and I think of things from the perspective of sales. And I said, you're part of the sales department. And they said, no, we're not. We're marketing. And I'm like, yeah, you are. You're the door opener. If what I give and what we're presenting as salespeople shuts the door, we're done. and they're like, oh, and it was really interesting to help them make that connection. And I think that there's so much beautiful digital work that's done by people, but it doesn't move a process. It doesn't explain a process. It just dumps information. And that's always so unfortunate because it's a lost opportunity.
I treat it like a dumpster, which can become a dumpster fire. You're so right. I worked at a company while I worked as their social media manager, and it was just shocking to me. They looked at social media, it was under marketing, when I thought this also needs to be under the customer care team. And these groups didn't talk to each other. They didn't even have a sales team. Somehow the company just expected marketing to somehow, sales will happen somehow. It was crazy, but you're right. At other places I worked with, it's like sales and marketing would not talk to each other. And so when marketing would give the decks and the presentation, sales would just say, screw this. This has nothing to do. It doesn't speak to my audience. And those are just very poor, lazy marketers that would not take the time to talk with their audience. I even remember one time working for an agency where the CEO really said he didn't care about the customers, or he didn't care about the people who were working for his client. And I thought, but these are the people who are talking with those who are the customers of your clients.
Oh, and that's painful.
It's really painful to hear that kind of stuff. I mean, taking away those who don't care. Let's take those people who don't care versus who just don't know any better. And I think those are the people we want to reach. And I think it comes down to is, can you have someone on your team who might also be a graphic designer, but who also understands saying, okay, if there are guidelines for what you can do in your PowerPoint deck or whatever your presentation deck is try something different and ask and saying if this is okay, but you can still do one that's standard, but you can do another one that is, can we do a little A/B testing? See what the audience prefers. The audience, not other people who are on your team, the actual audience, because they're too siloed from what they're so used to, and they don't necessarily think about, well, why are we doing this? I think it's a really good idea to play around with things a bit, try something that make it more like, okay, what can we tell in 10 slides? It's like that, because then you're really thinking about what to say. And I think the problem is when you put everything down, you're not thinking about what's important. And if everything is on there, nothing has emphasis, does it? It's like you're just slopping everything around, and it's like, what am I supposed to say is your main point or your story or things like that. Yeah,
exactly.
So now we can come down to the tips side of PowerPoint, since we are all about complain, flippity flu, I hate your PowerPoint. Yeah. No. Back in my day, we didn't have PowerPoint. We had to point at someone. That's all I did. You pointed at them and told them to do something they liked it.
We had handouts.
We had, I remember you had handouts. And
remember brochures?
Remember brochures?
Brochures.
You put it on a projector. I remember at a Chamber of Commerce, they had, it was a slideshow. It was so painful. So it's like, I'm not against PowerPoint. I think can be really good for people who know how to be good with other people's time. And to say what's the main point, and think of it as a presentation, but not use it for so many things that it's not meant for, including it's not a report, it's not a project management space. Now, it might be in the case of you're dealing with higher ups, but there are other tools that are so much better for that, such as, I'll use this as a tip. Now, we share tip time. My tip is mind mapping. Mind mapping is a great visual way it works for brainstorming, but it's also great because you can close down some ideas and only see something else, but you can see the whole big picture there. So it's like there's a central idea, that's the brain. You can make it visual, or you can make it simple. Heck, you can even draw it out. But I like using tools like MindMeister, or on the Mac MindNode, or when I'm sharing with people on Windows, Xmind. And sometimes it's hard to just talk about it, but mind mapping, definitely look it up if you don't do that. I've given presentations for tech companies of really smart people, IT, that never did mind mapping. And once they did, I even had converted a vendor to do that, to explain all the things that they want to communicate in a visual, organized way. And they said, this is so much better than trying to brainstorm in PowerPoint when we want to ask people what to do. Because quite frankly, you want to stand out from the crowd, and standing out means, ooh, I got a little sweat. I got some LED lights over here too. So Grant, sweating a little bit, and I got no makeup, nothing. It's
no makeup.
No makeup. No makeup. I have not gotten the iPhone filter.
Blotter. We need a blotter.
I could probably use it. See that nice little sweat, the nice glistening? Hey, this is all natural. Mind mapping is what I recommend. Is PowerPoint's not a place to collaborate, but it's also can be a place to organize your thoughts and decide what should have emphasis. In fact, mind mapping can be used to think about what you want to include in your PowerPoint and what you might want to take out or leave as an addendum, right? Like not everything has to be shown up front. The addendum can be a place for seeing stuff later. So what's a tip that you might have, Amy, for people?
Well, when I work with clients, there's two questions I always ask. Number one, how much time do you have? And number two, what do you want your audience to do when you're done? Because everything else has to fit in that time frame. So you were talking earlier about the, 10 slides, no more than 10 slides. How do you cram it all into 10 slides? And then people dumping all this information. Well, dumping the information is really important and it's good because you can sort through it and you can say, oh, actually this fits and this is just, extra stuff. I don't really need to add all of that in. And even for preparing for today, I had so many stories and I'm like, no, too much, out. And I took stuff out. And then once you kind of figure out, I have 20 minutes. Okay, what can I really say in 20 minutes? And what do I want them to do? And how am I going to, I got goosebumps. How am I going to build momentum and tell a story? So every slide they say, yes. You get them engaged every time. And they're like, well, what's next? And you watch them lean in, you watch them take notes, things like that. That is so important that you're creating that experience for your audience, because otherwise, what are you doing? You're just talking at them. You're not engaging them. You're not bringing value to them. And if they say, if you lose them at slide 3, because you didn't take time to really refine that process and practice it to make sure that once you start talking about it, because everything works in our head, everything works on paper, and then you start talking, you're like, oh, that sounded terrible. So if you lose them at 3, but you got 10 more to go, really your presentation ended at 3, and that's it. And the problem, you don't get a second chance. Whether it's internal and having a good relationship and getting to those results that your boss wants you to get to, or you want that bonus or whatever it might be, you don't get a second chance. And internally, you could be the next. If it's sales, then we have this, I'll just go to the next. I'll go to the next. Well, internally, you don't get next in the same way as you do when you're trying to close a sale. And so building that momentum within that time frame and really practicing that and going through that is so critical. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, when I work with clients to go through that process, what we end up doing is maybe identifying something that was missing, and then we can incorporate it in. It sometimes changes the process of what will be done after the presentation is done, or it might really just refine this lump of clay of information and direction and idea into something a little bit more refined that will actually be more of the product and service that's offered in the end. And it's always really, really fun when I see those aha moments with my clients, because they're realizing, oh, wait, we could do so much more, but it was the upfront work. How much time? What do you want them to do? And also, just real quick here, I chuckle because I have one client in particular who is extremely skilled, an amazing salesperson, but is oftentimes kind of caught up in the really meaty detail of the sale and the transaction that's going on. And I'll say, okay, how much time is this presentation? They're usually 30, maybe 45 minutes. And so then I say, okay, what do you want them to do when you're done? And he's typically talking to private equity firms, investors, things like that. And there are many times he'll just sit back and go, I'm not sure. And so we have to kind of like regroup and figure out, okay, what's the next step that you need them to say yes to at the end and not lose them in the process? And it's really interesting when you kind of stop and think really hard. What's your ask?
That's a really good point think about what happens next. And I know a salesperson is always thinking about what happens next. A marketer thinks that my work is done. I mean, that's the problem, is when marketing is responsible for the presentations,
right?
Or when there is a disconnect. Sometimes even the presentations just might be all over the place. Like one person might do things one way, one might do another. And if somebody gets different presentations, like somebody might be in technical sales, then but somebody might be a different sales area or marketing, it looks disjointed, and then it confuses whoever your client is or who your target audience is, and then it loses that sense of trust, or like you said, momentum. And momentum is a really good thing to have. And like you say, it's the opposite of you had me at hello. It's you lost me at 3. You lost me at slide 3. and I think what people are scared to do is they don't watch themselves. They don't listen to themselves. Toastmasters is a really good place for doing that, where you get what's called like the sandwich critique. Or I should say or it might be the opposite of the sandwich. I know what it is. It's like there's 2 cookies on the outside and there's a little something in the middle. You get a nice little positive thing at first, then you get the constructive stuff, and then you get something at the end, like saying good going, everything there. Even though honestly, some people might speak and could be terrible at it, but just by the fact that you're there and you are there to have feedback, because so many people won't even take feedback. They just put stuff out. And I'll give a really good example is when people who are working with another team and they wanted this other team to do stuff for them, but the other team would never meet their deadlines. And the first team would say, well, we put our timeline in the slide and they weren't following, they weren't doing what we want. And I would say, did you ever consider that's not how other people can process something? That's not, I mean, it's like where they're supposed to remember slide 50 out of 100 of here's all the deadlines for everything. Great for you that you put all this out there, but one, that's not the place for it. And 2, that's later. That's next. The time right now is to talk about, agreed, what are our challenges? What are we trying to accomplish? What are some solutions? How we work together? Meet the team. Like show some faces of people. Don't make it just a bunch of charts and graphs. And I find people who are on the tech side or the financial side will go too much into, look how much data I have here. Right?
Yeah, that's a report. That's a handout later.
That's a report, and a PowerPoint is not a report. It should not be a report. A PowerPoint, like I agree, it's a storytelling experience. So if I had to say one thing about the whole things with doing PowerPoint, it's if there's anything to change about a corporate culture, it's offer to do first what is asked of you, but then say, I'd like to try something different. Yeah. Could we do a little testing and see what works better with our audience, and then ask for feedback, because that way you will win people over who might have a fixed mindset, because a lot of corporate culture, there'll be a standard deck, a standard presentation, and even their own bosses will say, oh, I want you to tell me a story, but you got to do it in 6 slides. That's not a bad thing, but some people maybe don't know on how the animation feature, and it's not tricky. You can just introduce one block of stuff in the slide, the next block of stuff, and you can gray out the previous stuff while you're talking. So I think it's going to take people have to improve on their PowerPoint skills. That makes it more storytelling, maybe a little graphic design if they're serious. If not, then hopefully you can find someone who, I mean, I get asked to touch people's presentations up a bit so that it does these things. You don't have to be the expert. Find someone who can help you if it really matters to you. So
if I can just add, oops, excuse me. If I can just add 2.
You're my guest. You're supposed to interrupt me.
No, it's interesting. So when you were talking about animation earlier, I actually just added something to my notes for today that one of the things that I have to be very careful of, because actually a lot of the slide decks that I put together are pitches to raise capital. And so what happens is there's going to be a printout of the slide deck, and then it's going to be handed to the investors. So when I'm introducing something that's a really complex concept, I will use the animation to do that. And I absolutely do not use animation for decorative purposes, I use animation for control of messaging and control of where the presenter is at, to keep the attention on them. Because in my circumstance, for the projects I've been working on, in most cases, the PowerPoint is secondary. The trust that the investors are making in the presenter, the people asking for the money, that's primary. And so if that has to happen. And so when I do these presentations and I do the animation, the one thing that I'm always looking at, one, animate with purpose, but second, when they have that handout, what does that animation look like? Am I hiding something? Because I fade in and out information and, replace it with other things. In fact, I do that a lot with tables because I can control the rows as I add it in. So I'll do table over table over table over table to add the rows. And sometimes lining that up, it gets a little tricky. But in any case.
It's a really good point, because sometimes people can go overboard with a feature. Like, oh, I can do animation now. And then it's
right. Oh, it's pretty.
Yeah.
Starburst. No, that's annoying. We're not in 8th grade. So the other thing is, when it's printed out in that handout, is the information still valuable? Or the flip side, is your secret sauce hidden in because of the way you animated?
It's a taste.
It could be a little bit, it depends on who you're giving it to and what you want to release in print form. I mean, sure, they signed an NDA, but the dinner table might be with friends and family who are not covered by that NDA, and that could be on the table. You always have to be mindful and very careful of what's going to be printed and shared, if you give it to them in a PDF form, which happens all the time, does that information is it still accessible, even though it's from an animated slide? So that's a really helpful thing that I've had to figure out. Okay, what's that going to look like when we're done?
Yeah, which goes to, I think, my final tip from all of this is, you give them more. Even though I put expanded version, you give them more than one format as an option. As an option, right. Some people might be fine with a presentation. That's all they have time for, and they might never get around to reading anything. But as long as they know that's an option, I think people feel a lot more comfortable, because they know they can always go back and ask more. Sometimes people just want to feel like they can trust who is the presenter. They can trust the company that's doing it. Or if it's internally and it's cross teams, that they're building a relationship with someone, because this is also the challenge we have with remote working. It's how do you stand out from the fog and the noise when there's so many other things, especially when people are multitasking, which I just really call attention switching. And you have to be really smart. If I'm just having a bunch of stuff on screen and there's nothing going on, or there isn't something that's directly capturing my attention and making me want to listen to the presenter, then I'm going to be way too likely to be doing something else. And most of the audience will.
Sorry, I got a text message. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Selfie.
What's happening on LinkedIn? I mean, Facebook. I mean, Snapchat. I mean.
Oh yeah. I'm listening. YouTube. Oh yeah. What? Oh yeah. I'll have it ready for you. What? I was supposed to do yesterday.
What?
Oh, you should have told me. What you told me in your presentation? Well, it sucked.
What slide was that?
What slide was it that you said we had a deadline for? That's an actual situation.
I can tell.
Yes, these are true stories. It's Dilbert come to life, and now we have an extra challenge with remote. So you don't even have necessarily the opportunity to having a physical presence. So you got to work a little harder at it too. Trust yourself. Having speaking skills, or going to like a Toastmasters where you work on yourself. And granted, my last thing is, just start off with, how could you give a presentation without slides? Now that could be really interesting. Yeah. So you're not relying on, well, I got all this data here. How well could you capture your audience by just speaking that way and then work up? It's like boot camp in a way. And again, I recommend Toastmasters for people who are uncomfortable with speaking to a group. And it's not just about public speaking or presentations. It's about the Q&A time. It's about the conversations that happen before and afterwards. Like a good presenter will talk with people, if they're going out to an audience, talk with people in the audience beforehand, show up 5 minutes early. Who are the ones who want to come early? Strike up a little chit chat with them. You've already won them over because they came early. I mean, good comedians also would do that in stand-up. I worked at a stand-up comedy club when I was 20. The good comedians hung around beforehand and chat up the people who were there early because they already knew by the fact that they were there early, they were already invested in what was going on. You don't have to treat everyone equally. You can speak to a few people. You can even call them out by name. People like that, or at least they'll wake up. So a lot of good stuff.
You feel acknowledged, you feel like you're a part of something. You feel like you've been seen and heard and you're important, or it's that human connection that you want. And what I think of, because of my work experience, is hospitality. How do you warmly welcome people? How do you warmly connect with them? How do you warmly get that people to trust you, that you are going to do what you say you're going to do in this presentation that's asking for this, financing, basically. And so how confident are you? How well do you know the information? How well do you answer questions? And this is the last tip. I know you want to kind of wrap up, but if you get questions, that's not a bad thing. It could be a no, but it depends on how you answer it. And it could be they just need to clarify something, or they're testing you, which is going to be either a trust building or a trust breaker. And so you have to be able to roll with those kinds of things when you have those kinds of questions, and figure out how you're going to emotionally deal with that so that you don't lose them at slide 3, as I've said. But this is the thing you do with that information. If you have the luxury of having somebody come to the presentation or participate in the presentation, and if it's a situation where they can see all of the audience, because everybody is on camera, what's the audience doing as you're giving a presentation? What slide were the questions asked on? What aha moments? And oh yeah, what were the things that you got the affirmation for? Where were the questions? And then when you go back, refine it. Take all that information and build those questions into your next iteration, because then you get further along in the process, whether it's convincing another department that they need to make this change that they absolutely don't want to make because they're sick of implementing new software. But they still it's going to happen. So how do you do that? Well, the last department complained about blah, 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 or pointed out the challenges. And so if you do that, one, it'll make your presentation better, and you'll have fewer no's in the process, and you'll have fewer need for next.
That's a really, really good point there about a presentation is something you get real-time feedback from the audience. Yeah. And then you improve on it. You can incorporate those questions. But I also think and this is probably my last tip, is your presentation isn't over when your presentation's over. It's like now the really good part is the questions people have. Yeah. Is especially, I also say, if you can tell a personal story of maybe that someone else can relate to, and that, yeah. And maybe you call them out if they're in the audience and they're okay with that. You ask them beforehand. It gives it so much better of a personal touch. I think the way to add a little interactivity into your presentation is really good. Sometimes it might even be able to do a poll. And there are services out there. One of them is a company called Slido that can do real-time polling if people are in a space, and people can upvote a question too. Yay. I did this with a group when I was a speaker, and I gave a presentation, and it was selected in their Slido application of, okay, the questions that were upvoted by the entire group of tech folks were the first questions that were asked. Perfect. And that was a nice way. And they could also have in the timing of, it was a recorded video of the whole presentation of, well, here's when this question was asked, here's when it was responded to. So to be able to repurpose your presentation, to record it, to chapterize it so people can go to write what they want. Don't make them feel like if it's a 45-minute presentation, they have to watch a 45-minute presentation. Chop it up. Chop it up like good tasty meat. This is
prep your meal.
Chop it up. I mean, really, chop it up. Think of how you can repurpose your presentation based on what resonates so good with people. Take out the stuff that doesn't necessarily work. I mean, in stand-up comedy, you find out it's like Chris Rock first bombs with his stuff when he's trying new material. I mean, some people, even Dave Chappelle, really natural, but he'll go on and on for hours, but he'll find what are the things that are validated with more than one audience. When I worked in stand-up comedy and I was a comedian, I would see some things would just kill and other things would bomb. It was the same stuff, same delivery, but it all came down to once you figure out who your target audience is and what resonates with them, then you can refine it just for that audience. And now you have a killer presentation. So top tips are, what are you trying to accomplish? Can you take people on a journey? Are you a good listener? And the willingness to reiterate, to get real-time feedback on your presentation, and it will make it so much better. Well, Amy, last thing is, where can people find you out in the interwebs, and tell a little bit more about how you help people with make them communicate better?
So probably my website, and it's calaplan.com. And I'm on the socials. It's Calaplan. Sometimes it's Calaplan ABC because Calaplan itself was taken. It's because it's Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. So just Calaplan. It's usually pretty consistent to be able to find it. And I can help people with their visual, their spoken, or their written communication strategies, whether it's a combined effort. Sometimes all of those go together. I have some digital products that help you practice your communication, and then I offer classes. So.
That is really good stuff, and I am just going to take off my glasses because these lights are making me sweat. Dang it.
This is hard work.
Dang it. I'm sweating over here. It's like I'm in a sauna. Man, how to burn calories. Do StreamYard. Yes. And this I'd say is $25 a month well spent, because as Amy has heard me say before, you got to spend money to make money. At least that's what I tell my spouses. But honey, you got to spend money to make money. Oh wait, this isn't making it. No, I hope from this use them. Thank you so much, Amy. This is so much fun, and we are both a big believer in that. People can have a growth mindset. People can communicate better and have fun doing it. And by a word such as PowerPointless, by turning a frustration into a creation game. And I'm going to say my last thing is I'm going to introduce a not sponsor here. Not sponsors because there are no sponsors of the show. Who would we like to get as a sponsor? Well, I'm only saying this because it's time to enjoy myself. Old Smoky Tennessee whiskey. Salted caramel. I got started with this last week because we had closed on refinancing our house. Yay. This amount is to celebrate my first Streamyard. I'm not telling you how quick I'm doing it. You can take a guess. Old Smoky, Tennessee. Handcrafted. And by handcrafted, it might be, here you go. I just handed it to you. Handcrafted. Get out. Actually, it's fairly inexpensive. It's only $16.
Oh, wow.
It's worth it. I didn't start drinking bourbon till the pandemic. So thank you, COVID, for future alcoholism. It is all good. We deserve to reward ourselves. Amy, this has been a treat. Always enjoy chatting with you. Everyone out there, stay tuned next week. I plan to be doing another one of these except for the person who did expletives on YouTube, who's going, what the F is this? Who is this guy? Yeah, you followed me for some stupid videos I did on YouTube that have nothing to do with this. Not my problem. Pay attention next time. I swear that was the only comment. He was like, say, what the F is this? Who is this guy? You followed me for some dumb videos. Well, I got our attention. Ellie, anyway, this has been a treat. Next week, I'm going to do it on email issues. I'm going to give one, and I want Amy to make a guess of that. And then I'm going to ask Amy if she might have a favorite twisted word of her own. So this is going to be guess this word. Okay. This word is okay, I'm going to type it in here. And Amy has 30 seconds to guess what this twisted, made-up word.
The pressure's on.
Means. The pressure's on. The pressure's on. What does? Oh, whoops! I just clicked the wrong one.
There we
go.
I'm confused. Okay.
I am the producer of the show. Can you tell? Ironic. What does ironic supposed to mean? Make up a definition for it. Tick tock.
I don't know. Ding.
Okay. I say ironic is when someone emails everyone in their group to lecture them that they shouldn't, or someone, see, I even screwed up my own little thing. Someone sends a lengthy email to everyone lecturing them on to not send lengthy emails. Ironic. There you go.
Those are painful.
Like, yes, I've had emails that would have like 5 or 6 subjects from a marketing executive, and it's like now 6 different conversations in 50 different emails, and it just makes you want to, let's just say sometimes there are arguments where physical violence, I'm not justifying it, but no one would notice if they were missing. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Ironic. Ironic. Yeah. You didn't hear that from me. Maybe you
I don't
did.
know
There's a
anything.
recording. But these days, even video isn't enough evidence. So go figure. Amy, do you by chance have a favorite word of your own? Real, made up, anything, tells a story, whatever you could say, hey, that's my word, or I use that word a lot?
You know, I'm not as clever as you are with the wording. I think my business name is clever because it's a play on my last name, Callahan, Calaplan.
Man.
So that's probably the most exciting idea that I.
It is nice.
And I've had all day to think about it, and I still didn't come up with anything.
It will hit you. It's like one thing I've learned is these things are never forced. These are, to me, they're like word farts in a way. Only mine smell good. Good. Well, Calaplan, I love it when people will take something, tell a story. My first business name was called Grantastic Designs. Yeah. And it was fun to be able to use something. Anyone who is willing to play with words is it's an invitation to a conversation. It's a story in the making. And thank you so much, Amy, for joining me on Uisms. This has been a lot of fun. For everyone else, I want to thank you, whoever's commenting in there. I got a few comments, so there we go. Okay, good. Hey, Greg, my good friend Greg on LinkedIn, Greg Gazin, who had me on his show on the Toastcaster podcast. So I realized I can only post comments back on YouTube. I can't do it on Facebook and LinkedIn unless I am on there at the same time. So it's only me.
Go on LinkedIn right now, see what happens.
Let's post a LinkedIn there. Amy posts, this show sucks.
No. Hi. Amy's awesome.
Hi, Amy Callahan. Well, I will thank you. You didn't go through this interview saying, well, Amy Callahan believes in this or that. Amy Callahan does this. Amy Callahan drinks Old Smoky Tennessee whiskey, salted caramel, also now in mango habanero. Old Smoky. Can't just do one for a day.
Wait. Mango habanero?
They have mango habanero there too. Actually, after this, I am drinking Mexican chocolate beer with Carolina Reaper peppers in it. It was over at my Harris Teeter Market. That's a market on the East Coast, or at least in North Carolina. I'm going to see, is it really hot? Do I know what I'm getting myself in for? Carolina Reaper pepper, the hottest pepper in the universe that people like to eat and that they go to the hospital for.
So that sounds kind of dangerous. I just want to say.
You might not see me again, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. Habaneros are pretty wicked. Actually, tonight is probably going to be a little bit of Tullamore Dew, Irish whiskey for me.
You're a whiskey person. Very good.
Well, Callahan, hello.
That's right. Okay. Callahan, fiddly-diddly-diddly-do. I drink all day. Why not you? Uisms. And that's what we'll end with.
No.
You heard it from Amy. Drink you under the table, Amy Callahan. My plan is you'll get better presentation. Okay, I'm making all this up. This will not be included in the recorded version.
It's too late. It's on LinkedIn.
It's already there. But in truth, this has been a real joy. Listen to Amy. Check out her site. If you're looking for someone to help you as a strategist, as a coach, go to Amy. She knows her stuff, and it will save you a lot of headaches, and you'll be way better for it. Thank you, everybody. And we are done. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Hasta.